We hope you enjoyed the Padam just before this video. And now that the surprise is broken to you, there are a lot of little nuances of our dear Akka that a lot of us don't know. Ashwini Di is a very dear friend of KKD and she's one of our strongest pillars. But she is also one of the people who has the most questions for Akka all the time. So here she is today, questioning or rather interviewing Akka to see her side of the story as she's not heard before. Let's tune into this conversation. I'm sure you're going to like it.
As a part of Kinkini Dhvani, we all know Swagata Akka. We all know about her so much. But still, there is a lot of things which we don't know about her. As a dancer, she traveled so much. So, let's talk to Swagata Akka as her journey as a dancer.
Yes, Ashwini. Yes, all of you know a great deal about me, and I'm sure you'll have heard about my journey as a dancer so often. But for me, it still always remains something that is really unique in my life because, of course, I was inspired to be a dancer very young because I loved everything and I could do almost everything. Music, theatre, writing. But dance, I needed to learn a certain style. So that was something that I really needed to work at. And I had to look for that. But once I did Kathak before I joined Kalakshetra. And that was more on account of the fact that, I had to do something while I was waiting. I decided to go to Kalakshetra when I was in my 8th grade. 8th grade to post my graduation was a long time, 8 years. I waited for 8 years to go to Kalakshetra and ultimately had to take permission from Ate to join because at that time there was a cut-off age of 17 years and I was 19. And once I joined Kalakshetra, there's just been no looking back. I don't think I ever thought that I would take up dance as a profession, it was just something that I wanted to do. It was just something that was deeply inside me. And going into Kalakshetra changed my life forever. And it taught me how dance was going to make me a different sort of person. And that was this person I wanted to be, the person who was enveloped in that aesthetic sense, in that sense of being, in that absolute different world of all things beautiful, all things that make you happy, make the soul happy. And all of it. Kalakshetra wasn't only about dance. Kalakshetra was about learning a way of life that was filled with beauty and righteousness and everything positive. And that was the world that I wanted to live. And I have grown since then. From a learner in Kalakshetra, I now remain a learner outside of Kalakshetra now for the past 30 years. But yes, dance has molded me, dance has shaped my character, dance has made me whoever I am, good, bad, indifferent. Today what I am is because of the dancing. I don't really like using the term dance, Natya, the way Natya has made me. Yes.
As I always say, KKD, Kinkini Dhvani, is my second home. And I think so it is for you also. And for all of us. As a founder of KKD, how you feel as a guru of this many students and how you started this journey as a guru and how you started this KKD?
As I said, I hadn't really planned on taking dance up as a career. It wasn't in my head that I was going to become a dancer. I loved everything I did, and I still do, and everything was exciting, and I wanted to do whatever I could. But once I came to Delhi, and even before I left Kalakshetra, actually, I had decided that I was going to teach dance. One of the best things that I learned in Kalakshetra was how to impart, how to spread this art, because our teachers, gems, each one of them, our gurus, and they were our gurus in so many ways, in how to behave, in how to interact, in how to be a good human being. Atte, of course, was sublime. She was somebody whose very presence, we've heard so much about people who have this aura around them. Atte had it, and when you approached her, you felt enveloped in that grace, in that energy. There's an energy field around her that automatically energized you. And our teachers have that too, all of them in their own ways, some quieter energies, some more vibrant energies. But they were all energy fields, and learning from them made me realize just how much I wanted to teach, how much I wanted to bring the joy that I was getting from all these people to some other people who may not be as lucky as I to come to Kalakshetra. And I did at that time decide that I would start teaching. And in fact, the name Kinkini Dhvani sort of was in my head since then. And I did mention it, I think, to some of my teachers. I remember Sharda teacher saying, that's 2 words, but never mind. And it was just that we were surrounded by the sound of music all the time, of the flute, of the veena, of the mridangam, of the violin, of voices. Not so much of the sound of shalanga, because in Kalakshetra we don't wear our shalanga to dance in class. But I knew that in my institution I may not be able to ensure that there are other forms of the art. But I did know that I was going to be teaching dance. So even though we don't use kinkinis all the time, I thought that the concept of Kinkini Dhvani would be really nice to put into the name of the institution. When I came in to Delhi, I didn't immediately start teaching. I started working. I worked in the fashion field, doing a lot of very interesting work because I had to interact with the viewers and of course the aesthetics that Kalakshetra had taught me, and especially the way Atte and Margadam teacher and Padu teacher would speak of the blend of colors and how some things in certain textures looked good. Those subconsciously one tends to absorb them. So I had those thoughts in my head, and I did pick them up, and I used them when I was working in Ogan with Kavita Bhartiya and opening up the international sector, the international wing of their fashion line. But I did want to teach, and a friend of my sister's who was teaching was leaving Delhi, and she said, "Come, take over my students." That was the most generous thing I've ever heard till today. Somebody actually coming and saying, "Come, take over my students. I want to hand them over to somebody who's passionate about teaching." And so I did. I went and I took over Asha's class, and we began in the temple, in the Uttara Guruvayurappan temple. Little Garbhagriham with a huge performance space, a stage. And it was called the Panchajanya, and it just seemed right because to me Kalakshetra was a temple. It was a temple, and to be able to actually start teaching in a temple was for me a beautiful experience. And though over the years my presence in the temple has actually shrunk, and I'm glad, because in so many ways I was the only person who was doing anything in the temple at that time, and I remember it was quite a struggle to get permission to start teaching there. But the Arshadhar Parishad has been so supportive that now there are, I think, 5 dance teachers and music and instrument and shloka classes, and the temple is vibrant with culture. And though that presence, as I said, has shrunk, it has always been my home. Kinkini Dhvani is my home, you're right. Kinkini Dhvani is my home. In fact, not my second home, it is my home. It is where I operate from, it is who I am. And I started teaching in the temple. I have also now started teaching at home in Noida, just for proximity's sake. But the temple, the teaching in the temple, the sound of the conch as it blew when it was time for the doors to open, the fact that my students who were with me would go around the temple every evening, irrespective of which religion they originally belonged to or believed in, that has actually framed the character of Kinkini Dhvani. That is who the children of Kinkini Dhvani are. My children are my students. They are the most beautiful people that I know, because they come with their hearts open, they come with their minds open, and they absorb and they pour everything that the institution has to offer into them. And they've grown into beautiful human beings. There are students who've been with me for the past 29 years, and we are in our 30th year now. And they are such beautiful human beings, and all of them, professionals in other fields, have been told at some time or the other that your dance makes you something a little different from the others. And I think that is so true of all my students, whether they are the babies or the grown-ups. And I know that every year with teaching, every year with Kinkini Dhvani, as we move forward, I grow a little bit more, I understand a little bit more, I become a little more thankful to this beautiful art form, to my teachers, to Kalakshetra, for giving me dance, and for, in some way, in fact, in absolutely always, being responsible for Kinkini Dhvani coming into existence. And if Kinkini Dhvani has brought joy to anybody, I owe it all backwards to my teachers, to Kalakshetra.
In KTD, we do lots of programs, and one important is Smriti Prabha. Smriti Prabha, which you started from a long back, and still it is going on. Can you please tell about that, how you started Smriti Prabha?
Yes, in Kinkini Dhvani we do have a lot of performances, and one of the reasons for that was I realized that in Kalakshetra, the maximum learning that I had, that all of us had, was when we were part of the performances, when we were part of the dance dramas, the part of the variety programs, even the small shows that we used to do for our students' bodies occasions. And therefore I thought that irrespective of whether we got called for shows and got paid for shows, I would make sure that my students got a chance to perform. And that is why we have 2 major festivals in Kinkini Dhvani, Smriti Prabha and Vividharpan. Irrespective of whether we're doing other performances in between or not. And we do a number of other shows, but these 2 are our festivals. And of them, Smriti Prabha, of course, is my way of paying homage to Ate. Smriti Prabha, I started almost as soon as I started Kinkini Dhvani, but I hadn't given it a name, and I hadn't given it this format. It was just that we used to do Kalakshetra performances, items in and around the time of Atte's birth anniversary, which is on the 29th of February, so it doesn't come every year. So it was sometimes on the 1st of March, sometimes on the 28th of February, or the weekend before that, or the weekend after that. It depended. About 5 years into doing that, I realized that there may be other people also who were interested in dancing in her name, in her memory. As it is, Archita, who's been my strongest support system throughout the building up of Kinkini Dhvani, because she was right here, and Archita was my senior in Kalakshetra, and a beautiful dancer, a beautiful human being. And Tripti, who though she wasn't here, she wasn't even in India, and she was in Dubai at that time, but she made it a point to come and be a part of Kinkini Dhvani's offering to Atte, Smriti Prabha. These two people have been, but Archita, I have to say, much more than Tripti, because she was here. She was here for every performance, and she helped me build up Kinkini Dhvani's ethos. When people saw the two of us together, when my students heard us speak of Kalakshetra and how to perform, how to present, when we were doing our dance dramas and our Margam presentations, that made a difference. And Smriti Prabha, because it was, for me, a flow of memories, a flow of trying to keep that continuum of bringing Atte's work into our lives and sending it forward through my students, that we did Smriti Prabha. And Smriti Prabha has always been about those of us who have experienced Atte, those of us who have experienced Kalakshetra, performing in that sheer joy of being together again, of shared memories, of bringing that beauty of choreography and presentation, if we can, back onto the stage. And for me, it is an opportunity to speak of this wonderful human being who changed all our lives forever. Mine, I know completely. Being with Atte, having the opportunity to actually interact with her separately as an individual, I know changed who I was ever going to be, forever. And that for me is an occasion. Smriti Prabha for me is an occasion to be able to share that, to be able to speak of Atte, her vision, the wonderful things that she has said in her speeches, who she was as a person, what she represented for humanity. Forget about what she represented for the artists community. That for me is an opportunity that I never want to give up, and I hope that as long as I am around, I will find people who will join in and continue to participate in Smriti Prabha. You joined in. You and Simar, you were practically born after we left Kalakshetra, but you are here. You are part of Smriti Prabha. Uma is here. Suchitra is here. This is the way Smriti Prabha holds people together. This is the power of Atte. And every year when I think, will I be able to? Will this happen? She makes it happen. And I know that as long as it's happening, it means we have her blessings to do so. So Smriti Prabha for me is my offering, and Atte's acceptance of that offering.
If I'm not wrong, you are involved in all performing arts. Drama, music, आप मूवी कोरियोग्राफी भी कर चुके हो, and the most important is a storyteller. You are a wonderful and amazing storyteller. जब आप स्टोरी शुरू करते हो तो हम आपकी स्टोरी के साथ ऐसे बह जाते हैं जैसे पूछो मत. So let's talk to you about non-dancer as Swagata.
Swagata, the non-dancer, but तुमने तो जितना पूछा उतना actually still within the performing arts पूछा. Yes, music. Yes, theatre. Theatre was my first love. I still go goosey-bumped whenever I think of my experiences in theatre. And of course, it still continues in my presentation of dance dramas. नाटक छोड़ा नहीं है, नौटंकी हूँ, रहूँगी. And I think that is one of the most rewarding parts of my presentations. Music, of course, because I always sang. We're a musical family. My father sings, my sister sings. and my aunts are trained musicians, and for us music has been a part of our growing up, a part of who we are. So music is something that I don't think will ever leave my life. And being able to sing professionally, which I did for a while, has actually only made it so much more meaningful, so much more beautiful in what I think of and how I handle my music. Sitting for the compositions of my dance dramas, music is an integral part. Music, because of my understanding of music, and that is handed over by Kalakshetra, the Carnatic part, the understanding of how music will flow into a story, what it means, how the moods are, what ragams to use. Those are gems of knowledge that I would never have had, which I have got from Kalakshetra. Why that pathos comes across, or why that joy comes across, or why that energy comes across, because of the use of a certain combination of swaras. That is all part of what I have learned from Kalakshetra. Theatre, of course, I pursued very strongly as formal theatre, and then slowly eased off as Kinkini Dhvani took more and more of my attention with the dance dramas, with the teaching. I was fortunate to be part of the television fraternity, and worked for a very long time in serials, and which was a very different medium but equally challenging. And then came storytelling, and storytelling for me was absolutely a joy unrivaled, a joy that I love children. I love that interaction. I love people. I'm a very people's person. And telling stories is such a beautiful way of connecting, because there is a story that everybody resonates to. Some story for every person. Something that everybody understands and says, that sounds like me. That is why I tell stories. That is why I tell stories about strong and beautiful and vigorous things, but also about dark and solemn and sad things, and about overcoming, about challenging. Storytelling for me is something that makes me delve into myself and pull out every piece of myself that I can share with people and say, here, why this is something so beautiful, this energized me, this sounded good, don't you think this is right? That for me is storytelling. That is why I tell stories. And I'm glad you said that you all enjoy my stories, because honestly, I wish I could tell stories all the time. My dance tells stories, my dance dramas tell stories, music tells stories, beautiful pieces of art tell stories. The world is full of stories, and telling them in different ways is the biggest joy that I have. And of course, then there's the other non-dancer part of me, which is me in the corporate world, me in the world of work. But I've been very lucky, because there too I have been in the presence of people and working on communications. I've been working with social development at the very, very lowest level of connection that there could be, right ground up. And that has been so satisfactory, because Kinkini Dhvani has been a part of some of those interventions too, and they have been very fulfilling. The fact that something we learn as a part of our learning, of something that we learn as maybe even as a passion, that it can actually be something of beauty, something of value to somebody who's not practicing it, but because we are telling a story through that medium, it makes a difference to their lives. And this powerful change actually has changed the perspective of many of my students towards the dance that we do. So yes, my social development part, my communications part, my teaching other subjects part, all of that is part of me as a non-dancer.
Yes, KKD has indeed enjoyed the privileges or slight luxuries of having the non-dancing parts of Akka pulled into every show, every dance drama, every dance class. So yes, that is a very intrinsic part of KKD, and that is what makes us so wholesome, if I may say so. We hope you enjoyed this week's chit chat and the Padam, and stay tuned because we're going to have many more coming up in the following weeks. Namaste.